Good morning, everyone. Bill Coleman here. Glad to see people online and glad our technology is supporting us. So that's great today. Last week we started mission statements, and I received a good draft. Now I'm going to have to go back and look to see who that was from, but I received it yesterday.
And Bedford. It was Bedford.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And glad to see that. And, you know, as we talked about those statements, as you get more information, I continue to encourage you to look at that statement and see if it still meets your needs and not be afraid to adapt it as you go. Not that you dismiss what you think is important, but that you just incorporate new information. Today, we've got a really important topic, and it's really about communicating to achieve your community broadband vision. We also talk about building that coalition in support of your mission, not just on your team that meets on Wednesdays, but more community-wide. And we've got a real expert on that with Adrienne Furness from the Benton Institute, because that's what the Institute does, is helps to message and build coalitions to affect public policy. And so we're going to get right to it today and turn it over to Adrienne for her presentation and her special guest.
Thank you, Bill.
Slides.
That's great. Actually, I told Bill he has to run my slides for me because I find it hard to walk and chew gum at the same time. So, hi, everybody. I think you all know who I am. My name is Adrienne Furness, and I'm the executive director of the Benton Institute for Broadband and Society. And just before we begin, you know, I realize sometimes that I don't explain very well to the people that are in these cohorts what the Benton Institute does. But briefly, we believe that we need to build resilient, high-speed broadband infrastructure that reaches everywhere in the United States. So in other words, broadband access. It's important, of course, to connect everyone to affordable internet service and equip people with the devices and the skills they need to use these connections. And all of you know that that's called broadband adoption. But finally, that third leg of that stool is to ensure that broadband uses serve opportunity for all and communities. So what we do to make sure that the vision is realized, as Bill says, is we affect public policy. And we do that by making sure that people have timely information, data, and practical guidance, which is where you all come in. And so we've been running, as Bill knows, and many of the people who are partnering with us on this program, this is the fourth state that we've rolled out the Accelerate program. And it really is about making sure that we implement a broadband for all agenda. So as Bill said today, we're going to talk about communicating to achieve your community broadband vision. And of course, Bill, next slide. Many of you have started to work on your vision. And so we ask you the following questions. What does your community look like when you're successful? So we're asking you to dream. A lot of you told us at the beginning when you talked about your broadband experience that your broadband is lousy. We always say nothing like lousy broadband to bring a community together. You have, as part of your initial process, formed a team. And these are people who you have identified as passionate community champions that are going to help propel that vision. You are, we always say, keep your eye out. There are always people you're going to pick up on the way, like hitchhikers, as you proceed with this journey that you're on. And also, as you undertake the journey, you're going to figure out what is the climate in your community for undertaking your vision. Are there things working in your favor? And more importantly, are there challenges that you need to overcome? And then rather than sort of, I think sometimes people get really afraid. The vision seems so overwhelming and large. And, we're going to bring broadband to everyone. Oh my God, we have to work with 4 different providers. It starts to, as Bill says, seem like a marathon rather than a sprint. So we ask you to identify some smaller outcomes or milestones that would make you all feel like you're actually accomplishing something on your journey and toward building your vision. Bill, next slide. So we ask you to come up with a communications or influence strategy for each milestone. And we say that there are going to be some people who help you reach it. So obviously those are people you have to be in touch with, or they could be part of your team. There are, with these decision makers, there are going to be factors that they're thinking about. They may be thinking about out-migration and how to stop it. They may be thinking about real estate prices. They may be thinking about economic development or innovation. They may be thinking about agriculture and other economic drivers. They may be thinking about how their school kids stay online in the case of a pandemic or other natural disaster that might befall the community. And then decision makers listen to people. I think Sammy's going to talk about that a little bit, and I will introduce my guest in a slide later on, but I think he's very focused on the community of who are people that actually can help you. They sort of, it's like a chain, they influence each other, and nobody loves to be alone. I think they all sort of think, okay, there's a domino effect, and oh, that guy's in on this, so therefore this is a good project. And you do want to think about who is the easiest for you to reach and who could become an advocate for you in this process. Okay, Bill. These are the things that sometimes people jump to rather quickly in the process, but we ask you to not go here first. This is sort of a third step when you start to think about the how or the tactics of reaching people. I'm already having discussions with Bedford, who's the community that I'm the community liaison for, about how they're going to reach out to the various people in their community to get the survey out. And they're talking about a variety of these different things. But that beginning intro to your survey should be laying out for people the why. Why are they doing this? Why are you asking them to spend 5 to 10 minutes of their time to articulate their concerns about broadband in the community and why they should spend their time to do the survey? Next, Bill. So we say messaging needs you need to think about 4 different things, and not necessarily in this order, but I like to say, what's the need or opportunity? We've all identified we're here because we don't have great broadband in our communities. We are starting to craft the vision statement, and you, in the process of this, are thinking about what you're doing and how you're going to do it. So I am at this particular point going to walk you all through, next slide, Bill, a project that Benton did. So this is one of the, how do we provide timely information to policymakers, national policymakers, to make changes for this section of our economy. And we did a report called The Future of American Farming: Broadband Solutions for the Farm Office, the Field, and the Community. And so this is a project that we worked on with the United Soybean Board, which is a national checkoff program. And they are very concerned about the sustainability of farming, particularly with the kinds of challenges that we have around climate. And they are really an organization that funds research and marketing to make sure that soy farmers can bring their product to market all over the world. So we spent some time after they had done some surveying of their farmers, and they found out that 60% of them had really lousy broadband. And more important, and this should be familiar to many of you, 75% of them lived in a monopoly broadband environment, meaning they didn't have the choice to move to another provider if they felt their service was lousy. So the vision that we came up with for this project was that broadband is a necessary tool to innovate farming practices, allowing for more targeted and efficient resource use. This would be water, seed, pesticides, what they call inputs and outputs. Farmers need connectivity in the farmhouse and farm office. That we established as being fiber. In the field, which is from that fiber, they would use wireless or cellular data to do their job. And in the community that supports farmers to enable sustainable data-driven agriculture. So many of you know that farmers are moving to precision ag to create more efficiencies and need broadband to do that. Next slide, Bill. So Benton came up with a team, which of course was ourselves, the United Soybean Board, and we worked with farmer leaders from all over the country. And we worked with a firm called Center for Rural Strategies that helped us communicate to this audience, because it's not an expertise of ours to reach out to rural areas particularly, or to the ag community, and the Center for Rural Strategies proved to be a powerful messaging and dissemination partner for us. Our primary audience was ag leaders, broadband practitioners, policy experts, and federal, state, and local government officials. And as I said before, the climate was that we had recognized that farmers were unhappy with their broadband. They didn't feel they had adequate internet connectivity to run their businesses. And it's actually 78%, not 75%, who were living in this monopoly environment. Go ahead, Bill. So we had messaging that we did. We actually came up with 16 actionable recommendations for delivering high-speed internet. And I'm proud to say that when we released this report a couple of years ago, this was at the start of the discussions about what IIJA would look like. And many of the things that we recommended actually ended up getting into the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and into a lot of state policy, including the need for faster upload speeds. You know, a lot of times people are like looking at 25/3, 25 down, 3 up, or 100 down and 20 up. And we recommended that upstream and downstream speeds should be symmetrical, capable of 100 over 100 service. We also encourage deep fiber build out. Look, why should rural communities get second-class broadband? Fiber is proved to be a future-proof performance standard. You can, with more strands, do more. You can reserve strands in your community for economic development and other purposes. But the point is, this is what we're going to need in rural America to make sure that you all get the kind of opportunity that has been something that more urban communities generally have enjoyed. We do talk about, as I said, broadband maps should include mobile coverage. So we do spend a lot of time saying, where are those cell towers in these communities, and do we have enough of them? Are there holes? Are there places where your cell service drops? We had an Illinois state cop on one of our calls who said, if I go up to the northwest part of my county, I don't get any cell service, and if there are any emergencies up there, you know, it's not a good thing because all of a sudden I can't get to anybody. So he lived in a very rural farming oriented community and knew the downfalls of not having good cell phone service, which is what farmers are using in the field. And then we spent time obviously talking about that it's not just about the wires, but it's about supporting these digital equity programs that promote adoption. So either affordability or devices or literacy. And of course, many of you on this call are concerned about those adoption strategies. Next, Bill. So here were our milestones for our project. And again, hoping that you all figure out what your milestones are going to be. We did a literature review that and sort of scanned what had been done in this field before. We had one-on-one interviews with farmers about their broadband use and needs. And we identified some best practice demonstration projects because oftentimes you'll find people who are innovating. There's a wonderful project up near Purdue University in Indiana where they have raised a blimp with wireless equipment 2,500 feet into the air, and it is providing broadband to 5 counties in Indiana. That was about the most innovative project that I saw. And these were all going to sensors in these farmers' fields to think about weather and water and things like that. Really a fantastic project. We convened these agricultural leaders, broadband practitioners, including people who were the heads of electric co-ops and small rural broadband providers who were really tied to the community and looking for the kind of success and partnership that we promote in this program. We obviously wrote and published this report, and then we created an expert pool of people to go talk about it. So whether those people were talking to the Federal Communications Commission or to congressional staff or to state broadband leaders, we were out there educating people to pick up some of those 16 recommendations and run with them locally. And so ultimately, we were promoting the purpose and implementation of agricultural broadband in rural America. And from this report and our partnership with United Soybean Board, we're now doing a rural farm sort of accelerate program. We've done a pilot in 5 Illinois counties. There are 43,000 farmers, soy farmers in Illinois, and we got them involved in this program. And so they're undergoing a similar process to what you are doing with the Accelerate program, but with a big ag focus. And that was the outcome of this program and our continuing partnership with the United Soybean Board. Bill, next. So we have these tactics. We wrote articles. We released the report in a separate document. So just like a 1-pager with the 16 policy recommendations, you know, people don't love reading reports. There's only going to be a small handful of people that would make their way through 30 pages. But everybody can make their way through a single page of 16 recommendations. Then if they want to dip in and out of the report, we sort of create these documents so that people with various attention spans can sort of look at what's important to them. As I said, we convened people, we interviewed people and talked about our thinking. We sent personal emails to people asking them to support our agenda on their own social media channels and in their meetings with government officials. I gave a lot of speeches. I participated in lots of panels. But, you know, getting the word out is really important, and you will discover that as you're unfolding the work in your community. Press is a really important ally in this field. So we have a press list, and out this press release went. We enlisted the United Soybean Board, our partner, to reach into ag press, because again, they had great relationships with everything from the Illinois Field and Bean magazine to, other podcasters and radio personalities that were reaching farmers all over the country. And then, as I said, we spent a lot of time on the Hill in Congress, talking to various people about and educating them about our recommendations. And then I also mentioned we engaged the Center for Rural Strategies to handle this rural outreach for us. We actually used a news syndication service that reaches a lot of small town papers to get some information into those areas. And then finally, we were able to use the then treasurer of the United Soybean Board, a woman farmer out of Missouri, who now is the chair of the board. And I got called by the staff of Vice President Harris to say, we would love to talk to a farmer. Do you have a recommendation? And I suggested that Megan Kaiser be interviewed by the vice president. And so, of course, the United Soybean Board was thrilled. And she is one of these people who was enormously articulate about the problems of having bad broadband in her farm. She talked about how it would take 3 days for her to upload data in order to analyze it. And when she got 25.3, it only took her 1 day. Still not fast enough, in my opinion, but at least faster than what she'd had before. And of course, she talked about the fact that her kids couldn't get online during school. This interview happened right as the pandemic was starting. So she was a powerful spokesperson for the project. Go ahead, Bill. So I want to now take this down from the Fed level and talk about some of the messaging that we've done in some of our communities and our projects. So Bill and I ran another program prior to Accelerate called Illinois Connected Communities. And you can see here that a few of our communities actually named their efforts. And I know Bedford just named their effort. And so it's really a good thing to rally people around something that could be called, in this case, Connect Flanagan was one of them, or the Mercer County Internet Initiative. You are going to reach out to a lot of people, and how you choose to do that is going to depend on your strategy. But the Leadership Council for Southwest Illinois and Mercer County both held broadband summits. And they brought in community groups, providers, and elected officials. When Bill and I make our trip to Tennessee, some of the communities in other states we worked in have held their broadband summits while we were there, and had Bill actually speak at the summit. So it's a good opportunity to bring people in and rally them around your cause. That same Leadership Council team held 60 community presentations. Now, they were in a 9-community region, so I'm not expecting 60 presentations in Roane County or Monroe, but since they were spread out over a huge region and they were an economic developer, they got out there and met with a lot of educators, public officials, broadband providers, and they did these community meetings to familiarize people with their effort. And then another thing that I wanted to point out was the city of Harvey, which is on the south side of the city of Chicago, and David Clay, who's working with Monroe, is from the city of Harvey, and he was on this team. They integrated their broadband effort into an overall economic development plan, which they called Trucks, Trains, and Technology. And if you know anything about the location of this city, it's literally at the intersection of highways and transit leading into the city of Chicago. And so they added the broadband feature to their trucks and trains and came up with a 3T. I love it, a 3T name for their overall economic development plan. Bill, next slide. So as I said, some of you are going to be promoting your survey shortly if you're not already. And this is a wonderful county we worked with on the Ag Focused Accelerate program. And on the right-hand side, I wanted to point out, this is a community that decided to create a business card, which they distributed. They figured that was something people would stick in their pockets a lot easier than an 8x11 piece of paper. And they had the QR code here to tell people to do the survey. Now, of course, this is assuming you have internet in the first place, but I think it was one way to get people to say, oh, that business card, yeah, now I'll take the survey and take that 5 to 10 minutes. Next slide, Bill. And then we love this Connect Whiteside. This was a community that created their own website, and their vision statement is over here on the right. Connect Whiteside envisions an equitable deployment and use of robust, affordable broadband infrastructure that improves the quality of life and competitiveness of every residence, business, and organization in Whiteside County. And you'll note here, this was one of the communities that wanted to put the survey both in English and in Spanish. And so you could, from this website, take the survey in both languages. And then they also created a logo on the upper left, which I thought was a wonderful, and a tagline saying robust, affordable broadband internet for everyone in Whiteside County. So a nice, short, pithy elevator pitch, so that when somebody said, what the heck are you doing every Wednesday morning from 8:30 to 10:30, they could say, I'm working on Connect Whiteside, and, you know, in a quick several word phrase to communicate what they were doing. Next slide, Bill. This is my favorite. I hate picking favorites, but I do. And I can't click on this wonderful presentation, but when you all get to your getting the slides from Reed, I hope you'll take a few minutes to look at this extraordinary presentation that was done by a team member for Hancock County, a guy named Roger Pavey, who is at Western Illinois Regional Council. This again was for the ag-focused program called Broadband Breakthrough. And it's a lot of fun, but you basically walk through a sort of several pages in each of these 5 areas on broadband basics. My favorite thing in that is that they said to people, okay, if you wanted to download this video game, if you had very slow service, it would take lots of time. If you had okay service, it takes 9 minutes. If you had fiber at fast service, it would take less than a minute, and sort of as a way of illustrating, you know, the inconvenience of having slow broadband. They talk about what's going on in Hancock County right now. They have maps up there, and then they talk about their survey results with quotations from people about the pain of having bad broadband. And then, because this is a very big ag producing, there are only 17,000 people in this county, but it has enormous farmland. And they actually did a economic analysis of what the impact of having better broadband would mean for the community. And they figured out it was going to be an impact of over $12 million a year to put better broadband on these farms. So I think just to motivate people, they did a wonderful job talking about that. And then, of course, the last thing was, look, we need you. Let's work together on these goals. So I really would love it if you all would get into what has become the favorite of my children. I'm sorry to say this, but it is really an extraordinary presentation, and they were really lucky to have Roger on their team. Next slide. So now I want to introduce Sammy Loudermilk, who's program director of Tech Goes Home Tennessee. And he is going to walk through a couple of slides and talk about some strategies that he's learned about trying to get his program that I'm sure most of you were familiar with in communities in Tennessee. And thank you, Sammy, for being here and for agreeing to talk with us today.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity. Bill, if you could move on to my first slide there. Good morning. Again, I'm Sammy Loudermilk. I'm the program director for Take Goes Home Tennessee. We've run the program in Chattanooga for about 8 years now. A couple of years ago, we expanded beyond Chattanooga and have a footprint across the state with a couple of our programs, and are hoping to continue to grow our Take Goes Home offerings across the state. For those that don't know about Take Goes Home, just very quickly, it's a train the trainer program. So we partner with schools, churches, and other nonprofits to offer a digital skills, digital literacy class. At the completion of the class, participants can pay a $50 copay, sometimes $0 if it's grant funded, to take home a brand new laptop. We also try to take advantage of the opportunity to educate individuals about low-cost internet that they may qualify for, and if they are interested, we'll help them sign up for those programs. So I'll jump right in. A lot of this stuff you'll know, right? You look like smart people. I've worked in rural communities for a very long time. I've been in Tennessee for 25 years now. I'm from Arkansas, so I'm a fellow Southerner, have been, always will be if I can control that. I love Chattanooga. And, you know, while I work in Chattanooga, who has the best internet in the world, we'll claim that until somebody refutes that. I actually live in the adjacent county in Sequatchie County. While I'm fortunate to have access to gigabit, quote unquote, service, pay twice as much as what somebody would pay for in Chattanooga. So I definitely understand what some of your communities are going through. Also, you know, I worked for a rural congressman for about 8 years. He covered 1/4 of the state, only 1/9 of the population. So I've been in several of your communities through that work as well. Again, what I'm going to offer today, hopefully you can take a nugget or two from what I say. A lot of it you'll probably already know, but as we all know, the first gateway in all of our communities are our elected officials and community leaders. If you don't have your buy-in from your county mayor, city mayor, your council or commission, you're probably not going to go very far with your initiative. Sometimes there's immediate buy-in, sometimes there's not. There's definitely the education piece that you have to implement there. But you know, that's the initial gateway into all of our communities. You know, if you can't leverage those elected officials, you know, your next step is, you know, your chamber, your business owners. They definitely have a huge influence on those elected officials. So if you can't get the buy-in from your elected officials, you know, that's the next step for community buy-in, in my opinion. You know, your school officials, they hopefully, now that we've been through a pandemic, have seen the value of having access to broadband. So, you know, that's a great buy-in either through your, you know, your principals, your teachers, your school board, but also your faith leaders. We partner with a ton of churches for our Take Us Home program because they see the value of having access for their community members. We actually implemented a program during the pandemic to help churches, you know, set up websites, online giving, taught them how to broadcast sermons over the internet, which of course is a great value to those faith leaders as well. You Your civic clubs, would not overlook those. That's where your business leaders are. That's where your elected officials are, your community leaders are. So your Lions Club, your Rotary Club. Some of you are probably members. So definitely leverage those memberships with those civic clubs as well. I would also look into, as Adrian mentioned, leveraging your local media. When I worked for Congressman Davis, we would travel a lot throughout the district, and if he saw a local radio station, immediately he would, no matter what our schedule was, pull over. So we'd pull over, he'd walk in the station and say, "I'm Congressman Davis, I'd love to do an interview." And most of the time they would put him on the air. But a lot of times when we think media, we just think of our maybe local TV or newspaper. But local radio is always looking for content. So I would not overlook your local radio stations. A lot of your AM and FM stations there locally, maybe reach out to them, see if you can leverage some time on air to talk about your initiatives there. And obviously your local paper, everybody reads the local paper, whether they admit it or not. And that is by far probably one of the most effective ways to reach your local community. And again, they're looking for content. They're looking for words to fill those pages. So if you can reach out to them and kind of explain your initiative, again, give them the press releases that are offered. Again, they're looking for content, so definitely reach out to your local paper and continue that relationship. Don't just send them a press release and walk away, because you'll probably need them hopefully time and time again, whether it's public meetings or updates on your project. So stay in contact with your local paper as well. I would not overlook those free publications. I know a lot of the communities have the shoppers, those quick little things you can pick up at the various locations. We're at the gas station, grocery store, the little real estate guides as well. There may be some opportunities to put, some QR codes or links to your surveys in there as well. I wouldn't overlook those free publications. And then your local bloggers. It's definitely at the bottom of the list, but I know in Roane County there are a couple of local bloggers that have a pretty massive following there within their community, and knowing the two individuals would probably be willing to publish a link to the survey as well. Bill, if you could go to the next slide. Just a few tips that I've learned over the years. Know your audience and message accordingly, right? Some of your elected officials or business leaders or just general community, may be concerned about equity and inclusion. A lot of your community probably does not care about equity and inclusion, and they're more concerned about workforce development and your economy. So just know who you're talking to, know what they value, and change your message accordingly, because it's all about getting something done, right? Not necessarily pushing a personal agenda. I'm not sure, feel free to raise your hand if you're familiar with Flash Kincaid. So studies have been out there that most people read at a 7th or 8th grade reading level. So the Flash Kincaid readability test, you can actually put your content through the Flash Kincaid scale, and it'll tell you exactly what reading level your content is. That also goes for your messaging, the things you say. You don't want to exclude a majority of the public, right? So don't over talk your audience. That's part of our equity and inclusion efforts in Chattanooga. We make sure that our messaging is at a level that most of the public can read and understand. Next, just listen, right? Sometimes we want to just talk and talk and talk to get our message through, but sometimes it's best to listen, see what people value, see what their personal situation is, and then that allows us to pivot maybe the messaging to show the value of what broadband can add to their lives. Another one is know your history. Your local fiber provider or local internet provider, may have promised your community internet for years and nothing's ever happened. And so that definitely, the trust factor comes in there. So know kind of what has been messaged to the community, and take that into consideration as you're communicating with the community as well. Another one is go to your community events with those QR codes, those paper surveys. I'm not sure how you're attacking that, but go to your county fair. It's probably one of your biggest events in your community each year. Find those health fairs, those job fairs, set up a table, interact with the public. You're going to be able to probably interact with more people doing that than trying to knock on doors in neighborhoods. And finally, accept your losses. You can quickly tell if you're making headway with individuals or not. And sometimes it's just best to move on. There's somebody else that you could spend your time on, and maybe eventually those individuals will come around to your messaging. But know that your time is valuable, and not everybody is accepting of the things you may be presenting to them. I know here in Sequatchie County, just as an example, on one of the social media groups, there was talk of a new industry coming into town, and I can't tell you how many people chimed in and said they didn't want the business there because that just means more people moving in, and that's going to change our community. Those individuals are not the ones you're going to try to win over, right? There's going to be some more valuable time you can spend on others. That's what little I can offer. I'm happy to, answer any questions now or after. I'm sure Adrian can pass along my contact info. I am talking with Roane County because we're hopefully about to implement a Take Us Home program there. So I'm happy to help any of your communities however I can.
Thank you so much, Sammy. And yes, we will be providing the slide deck to everybody, but I do want to point out that there's going to be a worksheet. We always say there's some homework when we do these sessions, and Bill's going to drop the link into the chat. This is just one section of it. It's just a few pages, but there is sort of going through some of the milestones that we talked about. And then there are a series of questions below that will help you sort of guide the community through some of these activities. Before I have Sammy leave and before we get into our breakout rooms, I do want to open it up for questions. And I'm so happy to hear that you might be going into Roane County, Sammy. That's great. Any questions from the audience about what we've talked about today? And I see Bill trying to get that link into the chat. Well, I do encourage you all, once you've digested the presentation and the slide from Sammy, that if you would like to reach out to either of us or to Bill to discuss this further, or as you implement your plan, and you want to talk about any of these specifics, please let us know. There were a few things that I hadn't even thought about, Sammy, that you mentioned in your presentation, like those shoppers. We're always looking for, what's the way to get to people? What are they picking up? I think that's a really good suggestion and something I hadn't thought of before.
Good. I have the slides now, or that worksheet in the chat, and so you can click on that and retrieve that. Why don't we take a minute, and if people have kind of a working draft of their vision, it would be great to hear that. And maybe if there's something you heard today or something you're already doing during terms of community outreach or communications, you could share that quickly. Joe, why don't you start us off? Joe Brooks. Caught you by surprise there, I know.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, Bill, I don't know where I missed last week, so I apologize about that, but I'm going to defer to one of my other team members because I don't know that we've started drafting a vision yet that we've discussed in today's presentation.
Okay. Anyone from the Bedford team ready to help Joe out?
You have to unmute yourself, Bedford, because I know you have a draft you can read.
How about now?
There you go.
Hey, our draft, we worked through this through a 2-week period. I think we've named our group Connect Bedford, with our vision statement being Connect Bedford intends to enable Bedford County to become the first rural community in Tennessee where all of our citizens are able to access and use affordable, high-speed, reliable infrastructure and internet to enrich their digital opportunities now and as their need for services grow in the future.
I have to say what I love about that one is you want to be first, and why not? Right? Put a little fire under the county to do that.
Good. How about Roane County?
Yeah, we're actually working on that in a breakout today. Trying to finalize something.
Okay. Anything you're doing to communicate to your community that you want to share in terms of kind of what you heard today or over the last couple weeks? Anything you're doing to spread the word?
Well, we have a 4th of July festival in the county seat, Kingston, which everybody from the county comes to. So we're going to have a tent there, and with handwritten or typed out surveys, and of course we'll pass out the QR code. But prior to that, we're going to use the 3 utilities, public utilities in the county, to use their mailing list or email list. And we have the school system, which has 6,800 students. And what's that? Churches, and our extension office says they have a list of 1,000 names that they service through their various activities. So seems like there was one more.
And I just found out today too, Tony and Bill, that we have a summer feeding program for the schools that Wade was telling me about. He's getting information on that we're going to utilize.
Oh, nice, nice. A lot of 4-H extensions obviously host 4-H clubs, and a lot of those 4-H clubs have technology initiatives and programs, and so if you can link to those, that can be really fun.
We have Mr. Smith with us also today, the lead director of our Roane County extension, and she's offered to work with us on that also. Thank you for that, Bill.
Nice, nice. Monroe County. You're muted, I think, Monroe, if you're talking.
Hey, Bill, this is Bedford County. Jeff Davidson from United has a question for you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Yes, earlier in the discussion, it was brought up about a $12 million economic impact that a county had been able to define. I just wondered, could you tell us a little bit more about how they came up with that amount? And then I have a little bit more information I'd share about one of the numbers I throw out occasionally, but I'd just like to know a little bit more about that 12 million. If you could tell us how they came about that number.
Yeah, I sure can. And in fact, I'm going to try to pull up the exact methodology, and if not, I will share it in the chat. But here's what they did. This was actually an analysis that some researchers at Illinois State University did, where they took counties that had high soy and corn output, and they looked at how bad the broadband was, so unserved and underserved. And they said if all of this land was served by broadband, you would see an increase in bushels and dollars associated with farmer output. And so they quantified using a methodology that had been blessed by the Federal Communications Commission that said that this was about a little under a 4% increase in output. And then they also took it, not just that direct economic benefit, but then since farmers have what we call an indirect impact on the economy, meaning if they're working with local grain silos or ag businesses or fertilizer distributors in the county, those people, the better the crop, the better the farmers do, the better the crops are. They tend to spend more money in town, so that added some input. Some dollars to that figure, and then they started to look at what's a sort of larger economic input. And sorry, I'm not an economist, so I can't come up with the third thing, but I am going to look it up while we talk, and I will give it to you when we go into breakout, and then I'll share it with the team. But if you punched onto that Hancock County presentation, you'd see exactly how they arrived at the number.
I'd also share with you what we found is with United Communications as we went into some of the rural areas was in order to stay connected, families are using multiple methods, hotspot, unlimited access on their phone, satellite, TV, and in some instances they're paying well over $400 per family to stay connected. And so when you get fiber to a home and you can reduce that payment to $70, you're saving $300 on average per family. Multiply that by the number of residences that you have, multiply by it turns out to be a pretty significant number pretty quickly.
Well, that's actually incredibly interesting, because what you're saying is if a family is shelling out money for broadband service, they're getting, their family or individuals in the family are getting a sort of an economic impact on them to offset the cost. That's a much more immediate family. It really helps with subscription sign up, I think, when you put it like that.
Well, I didn't even think about it until, one of the brand new customers told me, hey, I'm reducing all my services to fiber now. We don't have to have unlimited data because we don't, at the house, we don't need it. We got rid of our satellite TV because we're streaming. We don't need that mobile hotspot anymore. So that's a $120 payment we don't have to pay each month. And then, like you said, so when a family's getting, what was that, $3,600 a year? That's significant to the family. And oh, by the way, they're probably going to spend it somewhere. And that's why, some of the incorporated areas will benefit from the unincorporated areas, getting broadband, because they will come into the cities, to for some more entertainment, for a night out, with their family at a restaurant or whatever. But that's what we saw in Eaglesville last winter year, I believe.
Good, thank you. Thanks for that good information. And I also know of a report, one of my former clients, Blandon Foundation in Minnesota, did an economic impact of broadband, and they looked at things like increased, there's things that the federal government says about if your house is connected by fiber, that your property value goes up by 3 to 5%. And so there's a number of factors there that they put into play. And it'd be really interesting now, multiple years later, to look, and a lot of that was speculative because you couldn't really see in a short term the impact, but it's kind of a model for measuring that. We have the Monroe, it's having a little issue, we can't hear them, but to achieve affordable broadband availability, including fiber optics, wireless, fixed-base wireless, cable, and DSL in underserved areas of Monroe County. So that's showing some flexibility, seeing affordable as a key criteria for their community. I think that's a great effort. So thank you there. Well, good. Continue to work on your vision statements and the surveys now. You should have those. Everyone should have their test version. And then if you see, I'd encourage you to have multiple people take it within your group and make sure that everything seems to be working fine, that it looks okay. Take it on a variety of devices. And if you come up with any issues, we can get those to Dave. He's on vacation this week, but ready to jump right back and finalize those. And then that once you say go, then he'll clear out that test data. And then I'm not sure if it'll be that same link or if it'll be a slightly different link that he's going to give you for that for your final survey. So do your testing, and we'll be ready to hit the ground on early next week with those. There was a question about press releases, and I guess there's one of the partners, I think the Economic Development Office still hasn't finalized their approval, their communication staff, so kind of waiting on that, but you're going to get an email today kind of with that final draft, and so there'll be an opportunity for any final additions or corrections to your press release. And so that's one of the, they say if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with partners. And sometimes we have some delays on some of our partnership things. So with that, I'd encourage you to take on your work, begin to discuss this communication strategy. As I mentioned before, we've got the broadband provider interviews, the survey, kind of the marketing communications plan. So if you look at your team and say, we don't necessarily have to have everyone involved in everything. We can do a little division of labor and get some work done in between weeks and be able to make great progress if you split that work up amongst your team members. And then as you look outside and say, well, maybe we need one or two other people who's great at writing or communications, go grab them. A lot of organizations within your community might have communications people, healthcare providers, schools, and so on, that you could grab for specific tasks or limited activity. They wouldn't necessarily have to come to your meetings, but they would lend some expertise to your effort. Any other questions or comments? If not, then I'll be around to see you and just to check in. And thanks for everyone getting kind of our calendars straight on our meetings and when we're going to be in Tennessee. And then I'm going to ask a little bit for if you have good recommendations on lodging, either in your town or adjacent. That'd be great to hear that too. So Thanks everyone, and I'll see you in your rooms.